bullet left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second. Nobody breathed. Captain Elena Voss didn't blink. Her finger had already left the trigger. Her heartbeat, slow, controlled, almost meditative, was the only sound in her ears besides the wind. 3 seconds. That's how long it would take for the round to travel 3,200 meters across the Afghan valley. 3 seconds for history to rewrite itself. Impossible, Sergeant Major Derek Haynes had said 2 hours earlier, his arms crossed as he stared at the topographic map spread across the makeshift command table. No one's ever made a confirmed kill past 2,900 meters. You're talking about nearly 2 miles, Voss. Elena hadn't looked up from the map. Her finger traced the ridgeline, calculating wind drift, Coriolis effect, barometric pressure. The target will be there. Window opens at 1600 hours. Closes at 1603. 3 minutes. You'll have 1 shot. I only need 1. Now, lying prone on the rocky outcrop with her spotter, Corporal Jamie Reeves, beside her, Elena felt the weight of every eye in the operations center watching through satellite feed. Somewhere in a bunker in Virginia, generals were holding their breath. In Kabul, intelligence officers had stopped typing. The entire mission, 6 months of planning, millions in resources, dozens of lives on the line, rested on this single moment. The target, Khalid Nazari, bomb maker responsible for 17 IED attacks that killed 42 coalition soldiers and countless civilians. Ghost of the Hindu Kush, untouchable, until today. Wind shift, Reeves whispered, her voice crackling through the comm. 2 o'clock, picking up to 8 knots. Elena adjusted. 0.3 mils. Her breathing slowed further. The world contracted to the size of the reticle. Through the scope, she could see him, a figure in traditional dress, surrounded by armed guards, stepping out of a compound that intelligence had tracked for 3 months. He paused, looked toward the mountains as if he could sense her. He couldn't, but she could see him, every detail, the way he turned his head, the confidence in his posture, the arrogance of a man who believed he was safe at this distance, this impossible distance. Range, 3,247 meters, Reeves confirmed. Elevation, 1,340 meters above target. Temperature, 68 degrees. Humidity, 22%. Elena's calculations were already complete. She'd made them 100 times in the past 48 hours. In her sleep, in her dreams. The Barrett M82A1 beneath her hands was an extension of her body. She'd fired this rifle 10,000 times. She knew its voice, its recoil, its soul. Wind? Steady at 7 knots. Holding. The crosshairs settled. Center mass. But at this distance, center mass meant compensating for bullet drop that would arc the round like a mortar. She aimed high, very high. The math was perfect. The variables accounted for. The only question was whether the universe would cooperate. Her finger found the trigger. Send it, Reeves whispered. The rifle roared. 36 hours earlier. You're out of your goddamn mind. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb slammed his hand on the desk hard enough to make the coffee cup jump. His face was red, veins visible at his temples. Elena stood at attention, her expression unchanged. Sir, the mathematics support. I don't give a damn about your mathematics, Captain. Webb leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. Do you know what happens if you miss? Do you have any concept of what's riding on this operation? Yes, sir. Enlighten me. Elena's jaw tightened. If I miss, Nazari escapes, continues operations, kills more of our people. The political capital spent on this mission evaporates, and my career ends. Your career? Webb laughed bitterly. Your career is the least of my concerns. I'm talking about the 18 Green Berets we have staged for extraction. I'm talking about the CIA assets who've spent months getting us this intelligence. I'm talking about the credibility of this entire command. Then let me make the shot, sir. Webb studied her. Elena Voss, 29 years old. U.S. Army Sniper School honor graduate. 47 confirmed kills. Holder of the record for longest confirmed kill by a female sniper at 2,100 meters. Brilliant. Relentless. And, according to every psychological evaluation, almost pathologically confident. The longest confirmed kill in history is 2,815 meters, Webb said slowly. Canadian Forces 2017. You're proposing to exceed that by over 400 meters. Do you understand how statistically improbable that is? I've run the scenarios 847 times, sir. 847? On the simulator, with live fire at comparable ranges, adjusting for every variable, atmospheric conditions, equipment variances, human error margins. Elena's voice remained level. The shot is possible. Difficult, yes, but possible. Webb sat back in his chair. Through the window of the Tactical Operations Center, the Afghan mountains loomed like silent judges. Why you? We have other snipers. Experienced operators who, none of them have my ballistic computation scores. None of them have my consistency at extreme range. And none of them have studied this specific shot for the past 6 weeks like I have. Elena paused. Sir, I can make this shot, but only if you authorize it. Silence filled the room. Somewhere outside, a helicopter roared to life. You miss, Webb said finally. And it's not just your career. It's mine. It's everyone's. I won't miss. How can you possibly know that? For the first time, Elena's expression shifted. Not quite a smile. Something harder. Because I've never missed when it mattered, sir. Webb stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached for a folder, flipped it open, and signed a document. You're authorized. But Voss, you get one shot. One. If conditions aren't perfect, you abort. Understood? Yes, sir. And Voss, prove me right. Elena saluted. Always do, sir. 20 hours earlier, the insertion was routine. Too routine. Elena didn't trust routine. The MH-60 Black Hawk flew nap of the earth, hugging the terrain, using the mountains as cover from radar. Elena sat in the cargo bay with her gear, running through calculations in her head. Beside her, Reeves checked and rechecked the spotting scope, the laser rangefinder, the weather station equipment. You really think you can make this shot? Reeves asked over the rotor noise. Elena didn't answer immediately. She was watching the mountain slide past, thinking about distance, about impossibility, about the fact that every record exists only until someone breaks it. I don't think, Elena said finally. I calculate, and the calculations say yes. Calculations don't account for luck. I don't believe in luck. I believe in preparation. Reeves smiled despite herself. You know what they call you back at base? I'm aware. The machine. You know that, right? Elena did know. She'd heard the whispers, the nickname. Some meant it with respect, others with something closer to unease. A woman who didn't joke, didn't socialize, didn't seem to feel pressure or doubt or fear, who spoke in probabilities and percentages, who treated combat like mathematics. They can call me whatever they want, Elena said, as long as they stay alive. The helicopter banked hard, dropping into a ravine. Elena's stomach lurched, but her hands remained steady on her rifle. The Barrett M82A1, 50 caliber, semi-automatic, weighing 30 pounds loaded, was the most powerful weapon in the Army's sniper arsenal. At extreme range, it was less a rifle and more a ballistic missile system, and it was hers. 2 minutes to LZ, the pilot announced. Elena closed her eyes, visualized the shot, the arc of the bullet, the rotation of the earth beneath it, the wind pushing it left, then right, the thermal currents rising from the valley floor, the target stepping out of the compound, unaware that death was waiting 2 miles away. The helicopter touched down. Dust erupted. Elena and Reeves were out in seconds, moving low and fast toward the predetermined observation post. Behind them, the Black Hawk lifted off immediately, disappearing into the night. They climbed for 6 hours. The OP was a nightmare of loose shale and vertical exposure. More than once, Elena felt rocks give way beneath her boots, heard them tumble hundreds of feet down the mountainside. But she didn't stop, didn't slow. Reeves struggled to keep pace, weighed down by the spotting equipment. How do you do it? Reeves gasped during a brief rest. You don't even look tired. I am tired, Elena said, not looking up from her GPS unit. I just don't let it matter. They reached the position at 0400 hours, with 2 hours until dawn. Elena immediately began constructing the hide, Camouflage netting, natural vegetation, position for the rifle. Every detail mattered, every angle, every sightline. By the time the sun rose, they were invisible. 12 hours until the window opens, Reeves said, settling in beside her. Elena was already behind the scope, studying the compound, learning it, the doors, the windows, the guard patterns, the way shadows fell. At this distance, even with the most powerful optics, details were minimal, but she could see enough. "Tell me about Nazari," Reeves said quietly. Elena didn't take her eye from the scope. Age 43, former engineer, radicalized after a drone strike killed his family in 2011. Brilliant bomb maker. Signature device uses a pressure plate detonator with a backup mercury switch, almost impossible to defuse. "You memorized his file?" "I memorize everything." Reeves was quiet for a moment. "You ever think about them? The people you've killed?" Elena's finger traced the elevation knob on the scope. "Every day. And nothing. They were threats. I eliminated them. The math doesn't change because I think about it." "Jesus, Voss, you really are a machine." Elena finally looked away from the scope, looked at Reeves. "Would you prefer I pretended to feel guilty? That I second-guessed myself in the moment? That I hesitated?" She shook her head. "The moment I pull that trigger, there's no room for emotion, only physics. And after I remember every single one. Their names when I know them, their faces, what they did, why they died." Elena's voice was quiet. "I carry them all, but I don't let them weigh down the next shot." Reeves didn't respond, didn't need to. They waited. The sun climbed, the temperature rose. Elena hydrated on a schedule. 8 protein bars at timed intervals kept her body functioning at optimal levels. Reeves monitored weather conditions, updating the data every 15 minutes. At 1300 hours, Elena began her final preparations. She checked the rifle, the ammunition, the scope, every mechanical component. Then she ran through the calculations again: wind, temperature, barometric pressure, Coriolis effect. The rotation of the Earth itself would push the bullet right, at this distance, by nearly 3 feet. "Intelligence confirms target is in the compound," Reeves said, listening to the comm feed. "Window opens in 3 hours." Elena nodded, settled into position, and waited. The shot. 3 seconds. The bullet climbed, arced, began its descent. In the operations center, a dozen analysts watched the satellite feed in complete silence. Webb stood with his arms crossed, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. On the ridge, Elena remained frozen, eyes on the scope, watching. The round traveled through varying air densities, through thermal layers, through micro-wind currents that could push it inches off target. The math had predicted all of it. The rifle had compensated. But at this distance, the margin of error was measured in fractions of an inch. Khalid Nazari stood in the courtyard, speaking to one of his lieutenants. The bullet was still in flight. 2 seconds. Elena's breathing had stopped entirely. Beside her, Reeves held the spotting scope with white knuckles. In the compound, Nazari turned, started to walk back toward the building. 1 second. The bullet dropped below the speed of sound, creating a small sonic signature. At this range, Nazari would never hear it. Impact. The round struck Nazari's center mass with the force of a freight train. His body jerked backward, limbs splaying. The guards froze for a half second, confusion on their faces. Then chaos erupted, but it was too late. "Confirmed hit," Reeves whispered, her voice shaking. "Holy shit. Confirmed kill." In the operations center, someone started clapping. Then another. Then the entire room erupted in cheers. Webb stood motionless, staring at the screen, his expression unreadable. On the ridge, Elena slowly released her breath, reached up, adjusted the scope. "Range?" she asked quietly. Reeves checked the laser. Checked it again. 3,847 meters, confirmed. 3,847 meters, 2 miles and 159 feet, a new world record. Elena pulled back from the rifle, looked at Reeves. For the first time in days, something like emotion flickered across her face. Not triumph, not pride. Something quieter. Relief, maybe, or simply acknowledgement. "Pack it up," Elena said. We're leaving. Voss, do you realize what you just... I realize. Pack it up. They broke down the hide in 8 minutes, stowed the gear, began the descent. Behind them, attack helicopters screamed toward the compound to extract intelligence assets and confirm the kill. But Elena didn't look back. She was already thinking about the next shot. 6 hours later, the debrief was chaos. Intelligence officers, command staff, even a 2-star general who'd flown in specifically to meet her. Everyone wanted details, ballistic data, weather conditions, how she'd made the calculations, how she'd accounted for variables. Elena answered every question with precision. Numbers, facts, data. She didn't embellish, didn't dramatize. The shot was the shot. The math was the math. Captain Voss, the general said, leaning forward, do you understand the significance of what you've accomplished? Yes, sir. Eliminated a high-value target and set a new distance record for confirmed kills. That's not what I mean. The general smiled. You've changed the conversation, changed what people think is possible. Do you know how many times I've been told that women don't have the physical capacity for this kind of precision shooting at extreme range? Elena's expression didn't change. Physiology doesn't determine ballistic computation, sir. Mathematics does. Exactly. The general stood, extended his hand. You just proved that to the entire world. Well done, Captain. Elena shook his hand, nodded, remained standing at attention until he left the room. Finally, it was just her and Webb. You proved me right, Webb said quietly. Thank you for that. You authorized the shot, sir. I just executed it. Webb studied her. Do you ever accept a compliment, Voss? I accept facts, sir. The shot was successful. The mission was completed. That's sufficient. You know they're going to make a big deal out of this. Media, recognition, you'll be famous. Elena's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I didn't make the shot for fame, sir. Why did you make it? Elena was quiet for a long moment. Because it was the right shot. And because no one else could. Webb nodded slowly. Get some rest, Captain. You've earned it. Elena saluted and left the room. Outside, the Afghan sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and blood. She stood there for a moment, watching the light fade. Then she went to clean her rifle, because tomorrow there would be another mission, another target, another impossible distance, and she would be ready. The metal felt heavier than it should. Elena stood at attention in the award ceremony room at Fort Benning, Georgia, the Distinguished Service Cross pinned to her chest alongside the Bronze Star and Purple Heart from previous deployments. The room was packed, officers enlisted, media with cameras, even a crew from CNN. Everyone wanted to see the woman who'd made the impossible shot. She hated every second of it. Captain Elena Voss, the commanding general's voice boomed through the speakers, has demonstrated extraordinary heroism in the face of insurmountable odds. Her actions exemplify the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon herself, the United States Army, and the Department of Defense. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. Elena's face remained impassive, but inside, she was counting. 14 more minutes of this ceremony. Then debrief with public affairs. Then phone interview with Army Times. Then freedom. Maybe. As the general continued reading her commendation, Elena's mind drifted back to something that had been bothering her for 3 weeks. A question Corporal Reeves had asked during the extraction flight out of Afghanistan. What happens now that you've done the impossible? Elena hadn't answered, didn't have an answer, because Reeves had touched on something Elena hadn't calculated. What comes after you break a record that was supposed to be unbreakable? The ceremony ended. Elena shook hands with what felt like 100 people, smiled when protocol required it, answered the same questions with the same precision. What were you thinking during the shot? Wind calculations and ballistic compensation. Were you nervous? Adrenaline doesn't improve accuracy. I remained calm. What does it feel like to be the best sniper in the world? I'm not the best. I made one exceptional shot. There's a difference. That last answer made the journalists pause. They wanted her to be confident, even cocky, a champion. But Elena had never thought of herself that way. She was a tool, precision-engineered, purpose-driven. The shot was just another function, except it wasn't, and she knew it. After 3 hours, Major Patricia Keller, public affairs officer and the only person at Benning who seemed to understand Elena's discomfort, finally rescued her from the media circus. "You did great," Keller said, leading Elena down a quiet hallway. "I answered questions. With the personality of a ballistics computer, yes. But honestly, that's what's making you so compelling. You're not playing the hero. You're just you." Elena frowned. "Should I be playing something?" Keller stopped, turned to face her. "No. God, no. Don't change. But Elena, you need to understand what's happening. You're not just a soldier anymore. You're a symbol." "I don't want to be a symbol." "I know. But that shot, 3,247 meters, it's not just a military achievement. It's cultural. You're a woman who did something men have been competing over for decades. You shattered the ceiling and the record simultaneously. That means something to people." Elena's expression hardened. "It was a shot. Physics and mathematics. Gender is irrelevant. In the field, maybe. But in the world?" Keller shook her head. "Gender is never irrelevant. You know how many messages we've received from young women saying you've inspired them to join the military, to become snipers, to pursue careers they thought were impossible?" Elena was quiet. She hadn't considered that, hadn't thought beyond the mission. "I just did my job," she said finally. "I know, and that's exactly why it matters." Keller smiled. "Get some rest. Tomorrow you have a meeting with the Army's Advanced Marksmanship Unit. They want to study your technique." Elena nodded and headed toward her quarters. But halfway there, she changed direction, walked across base to the range. It was empty at this hour, 2200 hours, which was exactly what she wanted. She checked out a rifle, loaded 5 rounds, moved to the 1,000-meter line, and started shooting. The first shot was perfect, dead center. The second, identical. Third, fourth, fifth, all within a half-inch group. At 1,000 meters with standard environmental conditions, this was routine for her. But it didn't feel routine anymore. Elena reloaded, fired 5 more. Perfect group, again. Perfect, again. She kept shooting until her shoulder ached and her hands smelled like gunpowder and she'd burned through 200 rounds. Every group tight, every calculation correct, every pull of the trigger exactly the same. But something was wrong. The shots were perfect, but they felt hollow. "Trouble sleeping?" Elena turned to find Master Sergeant Victor Hernandez watching from the range entrance. Hernandez was 56, a legend in sniper circles, with 83 confirmed kills across 4 deployments. He'd been one of Elena's instructors at sniper school. "Just maintaining proficiency," Elena said. Hernandez walked closer, studied the targets. 200 rounds at midnight, after a medal ceremony. "That's not maintaining proficiency, Voss. That's something else." Elena set down the rifle. "Permission to speak freely, Master Sergeant?" "Always." "The shot in Afghanistan. Everyone acts like it was—" She paused, searching for the word. "Miraculous, like I did something impossible." "You did." "No. I calculated an improbable shot and executed it under controlled conditions with adequate preparation time. The mathematics were sound. The equipment functioned properly. I performed within my capabilities." Elena's voice was level, factual. Nothing miraculous about it. Hernandez was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up the rifle, aimed downrange, and fired a single shot without using the scope. The round struck the target 6 inches left of center. "You see that?" Hernandez asked. 6 inches left at 1,000 meters. Windage error. "No." Hernandez set the rifle down. "That's what happens when you stop treating it like math and start treating it like shooting. I missed because I was thinking about missing. You make impossible shots because you don't think about them as impossible. You just calculate and execute. Is that bad? It's beautiful. And terrifying. Because, Voss, there's a difference between being a perfect shot and being a perfect soldier. One is mechanics. The other is humanity." Elena frowned. "I don't understand." "I know, and maybe that's okay." Hernandez moved toward the exit, then paused. "But just remember, you're not a machine, no matter what they call you. You're a person who happens to be exceptional at this one thing. Don't lose sight of which one matters more." He left. Elena stood alone on the range, the smell of cordite heavy in the air, Hernandez's words echoing in her head. She picked up the rifle again, aimed at the farthest target, 1,500 meters. This time she didn't calculate wind, didn't measure temperature, didn't check humidity. She just felt, and pulled the trigger. The round struck 2 feet low. Elena stared at the target for a long time. Then, methodically, she cleaned the rifle, returned it to the armory, and walked back to her quarters. In her room, she opened her laptop, pulled up the ballistic calculator program she'd written during her second deployment, stared at the numbers. Then she closed it. And for the first time in 8 years, Elena Voss went to sleep without running a single calculation. 3 days later, the call came at 0600 hours. "Captain Voss, report to Colonel Webb's office immediately." Elena was already awake, halfway through her morning routine. She dressed in ACUs, arrived at Webb's office in 12 minutes. Webb wasn't alone. A woman in civilian clothes, late 40s, sharp eyes, government written all over her, sat across from his desk. "Captain Voss," Webb said, "this is Dr. Sarah Chen, DARPA Advanced Research Division." Elena nodded. DARPA. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. The people who developed everything from the internet to stealth technology. Why were they here? Dr. Chen stood, extended her hand. "Captain Voss, I've been following your career with great interest. Ma'am, please sit." Chen waited until Elena sat before continuing. "I'll be direct. We're developing a next-generation sniper system. Integrated ballistic computer, advanced optics, environmental sensors. Everything you do in your head, we want to build into the rifle itself. Make extreme-range shooting accessible to operators with 1/10 your training time." Elena's expression didn't change, but something cold settled in her stomach. "I see. We'd like your input, your methodologies, the way you calculate shots. We want to reverse engineer your process and teach it to a computer." Chen leaned forward. "You'd be saving lives. Making precision engagement available to every sniper in the military. Respectfully, ma'am, you can't teach this to a computer." "Why not?" "Because precision shooting isn't just calculation. It's experience, intuition, the ability to make micro-adjustments based on variables that can't be quantified. A computer can't know when the wind is about to shift based on how the grass moves. Can't sense atmospheric pressure changes from the way your ears feel. Can't make the 1,000 tiny unconscious corrections that separate a good shot from a perfect one." Chen smiled. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say, because you're right. But what if we could quantify those variables? What if we could train AI to recognize those patterns? With your help, we could revolutionize—" "No." The word hung in the air. Webb shifted uncomfortably. "Captain," Chen said carefully, "I don't think you understand what we're offering. This project has unlimited funding. You'd have your choice of assignment. Direct promotion track. After your service, a consultant position with a salary that would—" I said no, ma'am. Elena's voice remained level. "What I do is not a product. It's a skill. It's earned through years of training and failures and learning. You can't shortcut that with technology." "We're not shortcutting. We're democratizing, making it available to, making it easy." Elena stood. "And the moment it becomes easy, it stops meaning something, stops requiring dedication, stops demanding that shooters be better versions of themselves." She looked at Webb. "Sir, if there's nothing else, I have a training session scheduled." Webb's face was unreadable. "Dismissed, Captain." Elena saluted and left. Behind her, she heard Chen's voice. "She's more difficult than I anticipated." "She's the best," Webb replied. "What did you expect?" Elena didn't slow down, didn't look back, just walked across base toward the range, Chen's offer replaying in her head. Unlimited funding, direct promotion, post-service wealth, all for giving away the one thing that made her who she was. She reached the range, found Hernandez there, supervising a group of advanced marksmanship students. "Voss," he called. "Perfect timing. I need someone to demonstrate the 1,500-meter qualification." Elena grabbed her rifle without a word, moved to the line. The students watched with a mixture of awe and nervousness. Everyone knew who she was now. Captain Voss holds the record for longest confirmed kill, Hernandez told the class. 3,247 meters. Some of you will never shoot that distance in your careers, but you can learn from how she approaches every shot. Pay attention. Elena settled into position, checked the wind, temperature, barometric pressure. Then she stopped, closed her eyes, breathed, and remembered Hernandez's words. You're not a machine. She opened her eyes, looked at the target, and instead of calculating every variable, she just knew. The rifle cracked, the round flew. Downrange, the target showed a perfect center mass hit. The students murmured approval. Hernandez nodded. Elena stood, cleared the rifle, and stepped back from the line. But she felt something different this time, not the mechanical satisfaction of correct mathematics, something warmer, more human. Pride, maybe, or purpose. 1 week later, the envelope arrived at her quarters after evening chow. Official letterhead, Department of the Army. Elena opened it with mechanical efficiency. Inside, orders. New assignment, U.S. Army Sniper School, Fort Benning, Georgia. Position, Senior Instructor. Elena read it 3 times. An instructor position, teaching the next generation, passing on knowledge instead of executing missions. It was a promotion, a recognition of her expertise, and effectively, the end of her operational career. She should have felt honored. Instead, she felt something else, something she couldn't quite name. Her phone buzzed. Text from Reeves, who'd rotated back to the States last week. Saw the news, instructor position. Congrats, you'll be amazing at it. Elena stared at the message. Didn't reply. Went to her desk, opened her laptop, pulled up the ballistic calculator, but instead of running calculations, she opened a blank document. And for the first time in her life, Captain Elena Voss started writing something that wasn't a report or analysis, something personal. What does it mean to do the impossible? I made a shot that was considered beyond human capability, 3,247 meters, 2 miles and 159 feet. A perfect calculation executed perfectly. But now people ask me what comes next. How do I top that? What's the next impossible thing? And I realize, I don't know. I've spent my entire career reducing combat to mathematics. Every shot is a calculation. Every mission is a problem to solve. I told myself that removing emotion made me more effective, more reliable, more professional. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe the reason the shot felt hollow wasn't because it was too easy. Maybe it was because I'd forgotten why I became a sniper in the first place. Not for records, not for recognition, but because every shot I make protects people, saves lives, matters. The distance was never impossible. I was just too focused on the numbers to see that the real challenge was remembering why the numbers matter in the first place. Elena stopped typing. Read what she'd written, and for the second time in 3 weeks, felt something that might have been emotion. Her phone buzzed again. Webb this time. Saw your orders. Good assignment. You'll change a lot of lives as an instructor. Proud of you, Captain. Elena stared at the message for a long moment. Then she picked up the phone and called. Webb answered on the second ring. Voss, you okay? Sir, I'd like to request a reconsideration of my assignment orders. Silence on the other end. Then, go on. I'm honored to be considered for the instructor position, but I'm not ready to leave operational status. Not yet. Elena paused. There are still missions that require extreme precision engagement. Still targets that can't be reached any other way. Still shots that need to be made. Voss, you've done enough. You've proven everything there is to prove. With respect, sir, I didn't make that shot to prove anything. I made it because it was necessary, and there will be more necessary shots. I'd like to be available to make them. Webb was quiet for a long time. You know what you're giving up? The instructor position is prestigious, safe, career advancing. Yes, sir. And you still want operational status? Yes, sir. Why? Elena looked at the words on her screen, at the half-formed thoughts about purpose and meaning, and why the impossible shot had felt hollow. Because the math is only half the mission, sir. I need to remember the other half. Webb exhaled slowly. I'll make some calls. No promises, but I'll see what I can do. Thank you, sir. Voss? Don't make me regret this. Never do, sir. She ended the call, closed the laptop, stood and walked to her window. Outside, the Georgia night was clear, stars visible despite the ambient light from the base. Elena looked up, tried to calculate the distance to the nearest visible star, then stopped herself. Some distances weren't meant to be calculated. Some were just meant to be felt. The mountains of Yemen were nothing like Afghanistan. Elena lay prone on a rocky ridge at 2,100 meters elevation, her rifle trained on a compound in the valley below. The air was thinner here, hotter, with unpredictable thermal currents that made long-range shooting a nightmare. Beside her, a new spotter, Sergeant Marcus Clay, monitored environmental conditions with equipment that looked more advanced than anything Elena had used 3 months ago. DARPA's influence, probably. Even after she'd turned them down, their research had filtered into standard equipment upgrades. Wind speed increasing, Clay reported. 9 knots, shifting northeast. Elena adjusted. The target, a logistics coordinator for Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, was scheduled to appear in 43 minutes. Intelligence said he maintained a strict schedule. Predictable. Fatal. But Elena wasn't thinking about the target. She was thinking about the 3 weeks since she'd convinced Webb to keep her operational. 3 weeks of regular missions, standard engagements, shots she could have made in her sleep. Nothing challenging. Nothing that required her to be exceptional. Nothing that felt like it mattered. "You okay, Captain?" Clay asked quietly. "You seem distracted." Elena blinked, refocused. "I'm fine. Run the environmental data again." Clay complied, his fingers dancing over the tablet interface. Temperature 91 degrees. Humidity 31%. Barometric pressure 2987 and dropping. Wait. He frowned. Pressure drop is accelerating. Weather system moving in faster than forecasted. Elena checked the sky. Clear now, but on the horizon, dark clouds were building. A storm, coming fast. Time until target window closes? 40 minutes. But if that front arrives early, it will. Elena could see the clouds boiling, feel the pressure change in her ears. New timeline, 20 minutes maximum before conditions become unstable. Clay swore softly. "Do we abort?" Elena calculated. Storm arrival, wind variance, visibility reduction. The math said abort, call for a new window, wait for better conditions. But something else, something that wasn't math, said otherwise. She'd spent 3 weeks playing it safe, taking easy shots, following protocol, being the perfect soldier instead of the exceptional one, and she was tired of it. "Negative," Elena said. "We adapt. Captain, if the storm hits before the shot, then I'll make the shot before the storm hits." Elena settled deeper into her position. "Contact intelligence. Tell them we need the target's schedule accelerated. Any way they can force him to appear early." Clay hesitated. That's not standard procedure." "I'm aware. Do it anyway." Clay made the call. Elena watched the compound through her scope, counting guards, noting patterns, measuring distances. The shot itself was routine, 1,850 meters, well within her comfort zone. But the conditions were deteriorating by the minute. "Intelligence says they can arrange a phone call to the target," Clay reported. "Emergency message that should pull him out of his meeting early. But Captain, they're advising we abort. The risk is acceptable. Tell them to make the call." Elena's hands were steady on the rifle, but her mind was racing. Not with calculations. With something else. A recognition that she'd been playing it safe since Afghanistan. That she'd let the fear of failing to top her record keep her from taking necessary risks. The impossible shot had made her cautious, and caution in this job got people killed. "Call made," Clay said. "Target should appear in 6 minutes. Stormfront estimate is now 18 minutes out. 12-minute margin. Plenty of time for a standard shot. Except the wind was already shifting, the temperature dropping, variables changing faster than Clay's equipment could track them." Elena closed her eyes, stopped calculating, and just felt the environment. The way the air moved across her skin, the pressure in her ears. the smell of the approaching rain. Hernandez had been right. Some things couldn't be quantified. Movement, Clay said sharply. Guards shifting positions. Something's there. Target emerging from the north entrance. Elena's eyes snapped open. Through the scope, she saw him. Khalid al-Rashid, logistics coordinator, bomb supplier, responsible for 17 attacks in the past year. He looked annoyed, rushed. The phone call had worked. Range 10847 meters, Clay confirmed. Wind 9 knots, but gusting. Captain, the variance. I see it. Elena watched the wind indicators. Fabric hanging from windows, dust patterns in the courtyard, the way the guards' clothing moved. The wind was spiraling, unstable, creating microcurrents that would push the bullet unpredictably. Standard protocol said wait for stable conditions, but the storm was coming. And al-Rashid was there. Right now. A target of opportunity that might not present itself again for weeks. Elena made a decision. Clay, I need you to do something for me. Ma'am? Stop giving me data. I'm going to make this shot on feel. Clay stared at her. Captain, that's insane. I know, but the numbers are changing too fast. By the time you tell me wind speed, it'll have shifted again. I need to read the environment directly. You're talking about making an 1,800-meter shot without ballistic calculation? No. I'm talking about making it with a different kind of calculation. Elena's finger found the trigger. One that doesn't come from a computer. Clay looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Elena's voice stopped him. He'd read her file, knew what she could do, and maybe, just maybe, he trusted her to know things the equipment couldn't measure. Your call, Captain, he said quietly. Elena breathed, watched the wind, felt the pressure, and stopped thinking. The target moved across the courtyard, heading back toward the building. 3 seconds. That's how long he'd be exposed. Elena's crosshairs tracked him, not calculating, just flowing, reading the wind like a language she'd forgotten she spoke, sensing the bullet's path before she fired it. The first gust hit. Fabric snapped left. Dust swirled. She adjusted. Second gust. Different direction. The thermal current was spiraling. She adjusted again. Al-Rashid reached the door. Started to turn. Elena's finger moved. The rifle spoke. For 2.3 seconds the bullet flew through chaos, through wind that pushed it left, then right, through air density that changed with every meter, through conditions that no computer could have predicted. Elena didn't watch through the scope. Didn't need to. She knew. The impact was center mass. Al-Rashid dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Confirmed kill, Clay whispered, his voice shaking. How the hell did you? Experience, Elena said simply. She was already breaking down her position, and remembering that I'm not just mathematics, I'm a sniper. There's a difference. They packed in 4 minutes. The storm hit in 6. By the time they reached the extraction point, rain was falling in sheets and thunder was shaking the mountains. In the helicopter, Clay couldn't stop staring at her. That shot, he said over the rotor noise. You made that without ballistic calculation? I made it with a lifetime of ballistic calculation, Elena corrected. I just stopped relying on the numbers to tell me what I already knew. I don't understand. Elena thought about it, about the past 3 months, about the impossible shot and the empty feeling afterward, about trying to be perfect and losing sight of why perfection mattered. For a long time, she said, I thought being the best meant removing all the human elements. No emotion, no intuition, just pure mathematics. She looked out at the storm. But that shot in Afghanistan, the one everyone calls impossible, I didn't make it because I was a machine. I made it because I was a human who'd trained for years to trust her instincts so completely that they became indistinguishable from calculation. Clay was quiet. Then, so what changed? I remembered why I started shooting in the first place. 4 days later, Elena stood in front of 30 advanced marksmanship students at Fort Benning. She'd been asked to give a guest lecture, share insights from her record shot. The usual, but she'd decided to talk about something else. Everything you've been taught about precision shooting is correct, she began. Wind calculation, ballistic compensation, environmental factors. The mathematics of trajectory and terminal ballistics. Learn it, master it, live it. The students nodded, taking notes. And then, Elena continued, forget about it. That got their attention. Not actually forget, but stop relying on the numbers to tell you what to do. Because here's what they don't teach you in the textbooks. The perfect shot isn't about perfect calculations. It's about perfect integration of calculation and instinct. It's about training so thoroughly that the math becomes unconscious, automatic, invisible. She walked along the front row. When I made the shot in Afghanistan, 3,247 meters, I ran every calculation, wind, temperature, Coriolis, everything. But in the moment I pulled the trigger, I wasn't thinking about numbers. I was thinking about the target, the mission, the lives that depended on that shot being true. A hand raised. Young specialist, couldn't be more than 20. Captain, how do you balance calculation with instinct? How do you know when to trust one over the other? Elena smiled. It was the first time in months she'd smiled during a professional conversation. You don't balance them, she said. You merge them. You train until the calculation is the instinct. Until you can look at a target and know, not calculate, know where to aim. That's not magic. It's not talent. It's 10,000 hours of doing it wrong until you figure out how to do it right. She pulled up a slide. But instead of ballistic data, it showed a simple question. Why do you shoot? Before you worry about how to make the perfect shot, Elena said, figure out why you're making it. Because the day you forget that, the day it becomes just about the numbers or the record or the recognition, is the day you stop being a sniper and start being a technician. And technicians don't make impossible shots. Snipers do. The lecture continued for another hour. But that question, why do you shoot, stayed on the screen the entire time. Afterward, Hernandez found her in the hallway. That was different from your usual briefings, he said. I'm trying something new. Being human. Elena actually laughed. Something like that. Hernandez handed her a folder. Got something for you. New mission profile. High-value target in Syria. Extreme range engagement. They're asking for you specifically. Elena opened the folder, scanned the details. Range. 3D 100 meters. Mountainous terrain. Unpredictable conditions. Difficulty level. Exceptional. 6 months ago, she would have seen this as a chance to beat her record. Now she saw it differently. What's the target's profile? She asked. ISIS Logistics Commander. Responsible for coordinating weapons shipments that have killed dozens of civilians. Taking him out would disrupt operations across 3 provinces. So it matters. It matters. Elena closed the folder. I'll need 3 days to prepare, and I want Clay as my spotter. He's learning to trust the non-mathematical elements. Done. Hernandez paused. You know, when you first came to sniper school, I thought you were too mechanical, too cold. I worried you'd be brilliant but brittle. Break when the math failed. What do you think now? I think you're figuring out that the math never fails, but sometimes the human part is what makes it work. Hernandez turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Voss? Dr. Chen from DARPA called again. Still wants to talk about that AI sniper project. Tell her I'm not interested. I did. She said to tell you they're moving forward with or without you. Says they have enough data from studying other shooters. Elena felt something cold in her chest. They can't replicate what we do. Maybe not, but they'll try. And some 18-year-old kid with a computer-assisted rifle might make shots they should take years to earn. Hernandez shrugged. Technology always wins eventually. Question is whether we adapt or get left behind. He walked away, leaving Elena alone with the thought. She looked down at the mission folder. 3,100 meters. Difficult. Dangerous, important, and suddenly she knew what she had to do. 2 days later, Elena sat across from Dr. Chen in a coffee shop off base. Neutral territory. I'm surprised you called, Chen said, stirring her coffee. After our last conversation, I assumed. You assumed I wouldn't change my mind. I haven't, not entirely. Elena folded her hands on the table. But I've been thinking about what you said. About democratizing precision shooting. Making it accessible. And you're right that technology will advance whether I help or not. But you're wrong about what you're trying to build. Chen raised an eyebrow. Explain. You want to create a system that lets inexperienced shooters make expert shots. But what you'll actually create is a crutch, a way to shortcut the learning process. And the moment you do that, you stop building snipers and start building operators. Is there a difference? Yes. A sniper is a person who's integrated years of training into unconscious competence. An operator is someone who relies on equipment to compensate for their lack of skill. The first is sustainable, adaptable, capable of functioning when technology fails. The second is brittle, dependent, limited. Chen sipped her coffee. So you're saying we shouldn't build the system? No, I'm saying you should build it differently. Elena pulled out a tablet, brought up a document she'd spent the past 48 hours writing. Instead of replacing the training, augment it. Create a system that helps snipers learn faster, but still requires them to develop the fundamentals. Use AI to provide feedback, not to make the shot for them. Build a teacher, not a replacement. Chen read through the document, her expression shifting from skepticism to interest. She looked up. This is actually brilliant. You're proposing a training system that uses the technology to accelerate skill development rather than replace it. Exactly. Give me a sniper who's trained with AI-assisted feedback for 1 year versus one trained traditionally for 3 years, and I believe they'll be equals. But give me someone who's only ever relied on the computer, and they'll fall apart the moment the equipment fails. And you'd be willing to help develop this? Elena hesitated, then nodded. On 3 conditions. 1. The system is never marketed as a replacement for training. 2. It's built with failure modes that force shooters to function without it. 3. I maintain veto power over any feature that I believe undermines skill development. Chen extended her hand. Deal. Though I have to ask, what changed your mind? Elena shook her hand. I realized that fighting technology was stupid, but letting it replace humanity was worse. This way, maybe we can have both. When can you start? After I get back from Syria. Syria. Elena stood, picked up her tablet. I have a shot to make. 3,000 meters. Difficult conditions. Lives depending on it. She smiled slightly. The kind of shot that still requires a human, no matter how good the technology gets. Chen stood as well. Good luck, Captain. Luck is just statistics we don't understand yet, Elena said. Then she paused. But thank you anyway. 1 week later, Syrian desert. The heat was oppressive. Elena lay in a hide she'd constructed over 6 hours, waiting for a target that might not appear. Clay was beside her, monitoring conditions, but they both knew the numbers were borderline unusable. Heat shimmer made visual acquisition difficult. Wind was gusting unpredictably. The range, 3,087 meters, was just short of her record, but the conditions made it effectively more difficult. Intelligence says he's in the compound, Clay whispered, but no movement yet. Elena didn't respond. She was watching, waiting, not calculating, not yet, just observing, learning the environment, feeling it. 3 hours passed, then, movement. Target confirmed, Clay said. North entrance, range 3,087 meters. Elena settled in behind the rifle, but she didn't start calculating. Instead, she closed her eyes, breathed, and thought about why she was here. Not for the record, not for recognition, not even for the achievement. She was here because this shot would save lives, because the target was a monster who'd murdered civilians, because sometimes the distance between life and death was exactly 3,087 meters, and someone had to be willing to make that shot. That was why she was a sniper. That was why it mattered. Elena opened her eyes, looked through the scope, and everything else fell away. The heat, the difficulty, the pressure. All that remained was the target, the rifle, and the invisible line connecting them. She didn't calculate. She knew. Her finger moved. The rifle fired. 3 seconds later, the target fell. Confirmed kill, Clay said, awe in his voice. Jesus, Captain, in these conditions? Elena was already breaking down the position. It wasn't the conditions that made it hard. It was remembering why it had to be made at all. They extracted without incident, flew back to base, debriefed, the usual. But this time, when someone asked Elena how it felt to make another impossible shot, she had a different answer. It felt necessary, she said. And that's all that matters. 6 months after Syria, Elena stood in a DARPA laboratory watching a young sergeant, barely 22 years old, make a 2,400-meter shot using the prototype system she'd helped develop. The shot was perfect. Computer-assisted, yes, but the sergeant had made the final adjustments himself, had learned to integrate the technology with his training, had become better because of it, not dependent on it. Incredible, Dr. Chen said, watching the data stream across monitors. We've cut training time by 60% without sacrificing final capability. Elena nodded, but she was watching the sergeant's face, seeing the pride there, the accomplishment. He'd earned this shot, even with the assistance. That mattered. Captain Voss? A voice called from the door. Webb. A word? Elena excused herself, followed Webb into the hallway. I've got news, Webb said without preamble. You're being promoted to major, effective immediately, and there's a new position being created. Director of Advanced Sniper Training, combining operational experience with research and development. They want you to run it. Elena processed this. A promotion, a new position, effectively, the end of her career as an active sniper. What does the position entail? She asked. Development of training protocols, integration of new technology, mentoring the next generation, occasional operational deployments for high-value targets that require your specific expertise. Webb paused. It's prestigious, important, and it means you stop putting yourself in the line of fire every week. Elena was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the past year, the impossible shot, the empty feeling afterward, the journey to remember why it mattered, the work with DARPA, the evolution from machine to human. Can I think about it? She asked. You have 48 hours. But Voss? Webb's expression softened. You've proven everything you need to prove. You've broken records, saved lives, changed the conversation about what's possible. You're allowed to step back. Let someone else carry the rifle for a while. Elena nodded. Webb left. She stood in the hallway, thinking. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. Hernandez, it's Voss. You free for a drink? That evening they sat in a quiet bar off base, two snipers with more than 130 confirmed kills between them, drinking beer and not talking about shooting. Finally, Hernandez asked the question. You going to take the promotion? I don't know. Why not? It's everything you've earned. That's the problem. Elena turned her bottle in her hands. I didn't become a sniper to earn promotions. I became one because I wanted to matter, to make a difference. And I'm not sure I can do that from an office. You can make a different kind of difference. Training the next generation. Making them better faster. I know, but you still want to make the shot yourself. Elena nodded slowly. Is that selfish? Hernandez laughed. Voss, you're asking the wrong guy. I stayed operational until I was 48. Turned down 3 promotions. My ex-wife left me because I couldn't let go of the rifle. He took a long drink. But I don't regret it, because every shot I made mattered. Every target eliminated saved lives. And at the end of the day, that's what we do. We're not administrators or strategists or politicians. We're snipers. We make the hard shots so other people don't have to. Webb said I've proven everything I need to prove. Webb's right. You have. But proving things isn't the point, is it? The point is doing things. Being useful. Making the shot that needs to be made. Hernandez looked at her seriously. The question isn't whether you've proven enough. It's whether you're done doing enough. Elena sat with that. Let it settle. What if I take the position, she said slowly, but maintain operational status for critical missions? Train the next generation, work with DARPA, mentor young snipers, but still be available when a shot requires my specific skill set? You think they'd go for that? I think if I make it a condition of accepting, they might not have a choice. Hernandez smiled. There's the Voss I know, finding the third option when everyone else sees only 2. They drank in comfortable silence for a while. Then Hernandez asked, You ever regret it? The impossible shot, the record? Every day, Elena said quietly. And never. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. Elena set down her bottle. I regret that it became about the distance, about the record, about being the best. I regret that for a while. I forgot why I was making the shot in the first place. She paused. But I don't regret making it. Because it saved lives. Because it mattered. Because in that moment I was exactly where I needed to be, doing exactly what I was supposed to do. And that's enough? It has to be. Because if we start measuring ourselves by records and recognition instead of by the lives we save and the missions we complete, we stop being snipers. We become something else, something less important. Hernandez raised his bottle. To being snipers, then, and to knowing the difference. Elena clinked her bottle against his. To knowing the difference. 48 hours later, Elena stood in Webb's office, her decision made. I'll accept the position, she said, on the condition that I maintain operational readiness and availability for critical missions. I'll train the next generation, work with research and development, integrate new technology into our protocols. But when a shot comes up that requires my specific capabilities, I want to be the one making it. Webb leaned back in his chair. You know that's not how these positions usually work. I know, but I'm not a usual candidate. Webb smiled despite himself. No, you're not. He was quiet for a moment. They'll agree to it. You know that, right? You're too valuable to lose. But Voss, eventually, someday, you'll have to actually step back. Let go of the rifle. I know, but not yet. Not while I can still make the shots that matter. Fair enough. Webb stood, extended his hand. Welcome to your new position, Major Voss. Try not to make me regret this. Never do, sir. 3 months later, Elena stood in front of a class of advanced sniper school students. 30 of them, hand-picked from across the military. The best of the best, ready to become better. My name is Major Elena Voss, she began. Some of you know me from the record, the impossible shot, 3,247 meters. And yes, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the mathematics, the conditions, the calculations. But first, we're going to talk about something more important. She pulled up a slide. The same question she'd used months ago. Why do you shoot? Before you learn how to make impossible shots, Elena said, you need to understand why you're making them. Because the distance between you and your target isn't measured in meters. It's measured in purpose, in clarity, in knowing absolutely that what you're doing matters. A hand raised. Young woman corporal, couldn't be more than 23. Major, how do you maintain that clarity? How do you keep perspective when you're making shots that seem impossible? Elena smiled. She'd asked herself that same question 1,000 times over the past year. You remember that impossible is just a word people use for things that haven't been done yet. And you remember that you're not trying to be the best. You're trying to be useful, to save lives, to complete the mission. She paused. The moment you start chasing records instead of completing missions, you've lost your way. I know, I've been there. Another student. What changed? I remembered that I'm not a machine. I'm a person who happens to be very good at precision shooting. And being a person means understanding that mathematics is only half the equation. The other half is humanity, purpose, meaning. Elena looked at each of them. You can calculate trajectory, but you have to feel purpose. And when those two things align, when the math and the meaning come together, that's when you make the shots that matter. The class continued for 3 hours. Elena taught them ballistics and wind reading and environmental compensation. But she also taught them something else. That being a sniper wasn't about being perfect. It was about being purposeful. Afterward, Clay, now promoted to Sergeant First Class and working as her assistant instructor, found her reviewing student evaluations. They love you, he said. The students. They call you the professor. It's a sign of respect. Better than the machine, Elena said wryly. You still get called that too. But now it's different. Now it means something positive, reliable, consistent, professional. Clay hesitated. Can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Do you miss it? Making the operational shots? Being in the field? Elena thought about it. About the past 3 months training students. About the 2 operational deployments she'd done. One to Iraq, one to Somalia. Both successful, both necessary. About the balance she'd found between teaching and doing. Sometimes, she said honestly. But then I see a student make a difficult shot they didn't think they could make. Or I get a message from someone I trained saying they completed a critical mission, and I realize I'm still making a difference, just differently. But if a mission came up tomorrow, something critical, long range, impossible conditions, would you take it? Elena didn't hesitate. In a heartbeat, Clay smiled. Good, because there's a briefing in 30 minutes. High-value target, northern Iraq. They're saying it's the most difficult shot conditions they've seen in 2 years. Webb wants to know if you're available. Elena stood, already running calculations in her head, then stopped herself, smiled. Tell him I'll be there. And Clay, get your gear. You're spotting. Really? You've earned it. Time to see if my teaching actually works in the field. They headed toward the briefing room. As they walked, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Pure, uncomplicated purpose. A difficult shot, a critical mission, a chance to matter. The distance didn't scare her anymore, because she'd finally learned that the true distance, the one that really mattered, wasn't between her and the target. It was between who she used to be and who she'd become. And that distance, she'd already crossed it. Epilogue. 2 years later. The Congressional Medal of Honor ceremony was everything Elena had never wanted. Public, crowded, full of cameras and politicians making speeches about heroism and sacrifice. But this time she didn't mind, because standing beside her was Corporal Sarah Mitchell, the first student Elena had personally trained who'd gone on to break Elena's record, 3,141 meters. A shot made in the mountains of Pakistan that had eliminated a high-value target and saved the lives of an entire Special Forces team. How does it feel? Elena asked quietly while the speeches continued. Honestly, weird, surreal. Mitchell glanced at her. Is it always like this? The ceremony? Yes. The shot itself? That's different. Yeah. Mitchell smiled. That felt right. Necessary. Like everything I'd trained for came together in that moment. Elena nodded. She understood completely. Major Voss, Mitchell said, I wanted to thank you, not just for the training, but for teaching me that being a good sniper isn't about breaking records. It's about making the shots that matter. Elena finished. I know, you listened. The ceremony continued. More speeches, more applause. Eventually, Elena received her medal. Not for the record shot in Afghanistan, but for a series of missions over 2 years that had collectively saved dozens of lives and disrupted enemy operations across 3 theaters. Afterward, at the reception, Dr. Chen found her. The AI training system is being deployed to sniper schools across all branches, Chen said. Training times are down 40%. Qualification rates are up 32%. And, this is the important part, field performance is equal to or better than traditionally trained snipers. You were right. Augmentation instead of replacement works. Good, Elena said. Though I should mention I'm already seeing areas for improvement. Chen laughed. Of course you are. Send me your notes. Webb approached, now a full colonel. Voss, hell of a ceremony. Thank you, sir. How many of your students are operational now? 47 across all branches. 12 have made critical shots. 3 have exceeded my metrics for extreme range capability. Elena paused. 1 broke my record. Must hurt seeing your record broken. Elena glanced at Mitchell across the room, talking animatedly with other snipers. Actually, it's the best feeling in the world, because it means the next generation is better than we were. And that's the whole point. Webb smiled. You know, when you first showed up to sniper school, I thought you were brilliant but cold. All math, no heart. I was wrong. You weren't entirely wrong. I was cold. I had to learn how to be warm without losing my edge. And now? Elena thought about the past 2 years, the students she'd trained, the missions she'd completed, the balance she'd found between being a sniper and being a teacher, between making impossible shots and helping others make them. Now I understand that the edge comes from purpose, not from coldness. That mathematics is a tool, but meaning is the mission. That breaking records is fine, but saving lives is better. She looked at Webb seriously, and that the true measure of a sniper isn't the distance of their longest shot. It's the impact of every shot they make. Webb nodded slowly. Well said, Major. Well said. That night, Elena sat in her apartment, the Medal of Honor in its case on her desk, looking at a map on her laptop. Northern Syria, a new mission, difficult conditions, critical target. Her phone rang. Hernandez. Saw the ceremony on TV, he said. Looked like torture. It was. But Mitchell deserved the recognition. Not talking about her, talking about you. I survived. You always do. Hernandez paused. Got a question for you. Hypothetically, if someone offered you a teaching position at the Special Operations Target Interdiction course, the most advanced sniper program in the world, would you take it? Elena's eyes narrowed. Is this hypothetical? Not really. They called me. Want to know if you'd be interested. Full control over curriculum. Work with the absolute best. Train the next generation of elite operators. What about operational status? Maintain it. They want you to do both. Train and operate. Elena looked at the map on her screen, looked at the medal on her desk, thought about impossible shots and true distance and the journey from machine to human. Tell them I'm interested, she said. But I have conditions. Hernandez laughed. Of course you do, let me guess. Operational availability for critical missions, full autonomy over training methods, and the right to integrate technology without letting it replace skill development. Add one more. Any student who wants to learn my methods has to first answer one question, which is, why do you shoot? Elena smiled. Because if they can't answer that, they're not ready for anything else I have to teach them. I'll pass it along, though between you and me, they'll agree to anything to get you. They talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. Elena stared at the mission map, running calculations in her head. Range, 3,600 meters. Mountainous terrain. Extreme difficulty. Impossible, most people would say. But Elena had learned something important over the past 2 years. Impossible was just another word for distance. And distance could always be crossed, as long as you remembered why you were crossing it. She closed the laptop. Tomorrow she'd review the mission parameters, calculate the ballistics, plan the shot. Tonight she just sat in the quiet, thinking about how far she'd come. Not in meters or records or recognition, but in understanding. The true distance, the one that really mattered, wasn't between her and any target. It was between who she'd been and who she'd become. A sniper who understood that mathematics without meaning was empty, that precision without purpose was pointless, that the impossible shot wasn't the one at 3,247 meters. It was the one that saved a life. And that distance? She'd cross it again and again for as long as she was able. Because that was what snipers did. They made the shots that mattered, no matter how impossible the distance.